So in today's episode, it's 27 years. No. So in today's episode, I'm doing 27 things in 27 years. And I thought I'm going to record both an audio and a video. So you might be listening to the audio version of this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or you could be watching the video on YouTube, of course. And I thought I would just do something different for that, just because it's my birthday. Not on the day I'm recording this, because I am recording this on the 17th of September, and my birthday's on the 19th. But I want to have it prepared in advance so that I can just publish it first thing in the morning of my birthday, ready for you to listen to or watch, depending on, if you're on YouTube or Spotify. Now, what I'm going to do in today's episode is just list 27 different things that I've picked up over 27 years, mostly just from doing Chaos Online. I don't know if you could say doing or creating or growing, whatever you want to say. Because look, here's the thing. I know like a lot of people are going to be listening to this and think, potentially you included, and think, what, he's only 27. He doesn't really know what he's talking about. Wait until you're 30, 35, 45, 55, etc. I know there's a whole variety of ages listening or watching this, but yeah, I'm 27. And at the end of the day, you don't grow something consistently day in, day out for what? It's been like 2 years now, just over 2 years, 2.5 years, without having learned a thing or two. And on top of that, I work with different people from all different walks of life. I've worked with people in the USA. I've worked in, just from the top of my head, the USA, Australia, Romania, Serbia, Portugal, and England, of course, Scotland as well. The Republic of Ireland. So there are things that you do end up picking up from that, just from, again, working with so many different people from different walks of life, interacting with them on a daily and weekly basis. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of lessons that you learn. And then on top of that, obviously, so that's obviously like the more applied experience. And then obviously me doing my own research, going out there, trying new things, life experience from living in the USA, Japan. So yeah, I'm only 27, but I definitely feel like I still have things that I picked up over the last, I was going to say few years, 27 years, I could say, that I can still share. And even if you take away 1 point from this, where you're like, wow, actually, he is so right, then this podcast or video, depending again on how you're listening or watching this, it would have been 100% worth it. Otherwise, I'm going to get stuck straight in. Actually, before I get stuck in, I do want to say, even though there's 27 points, I'm not going to expand on every single one, just because that might cause this to go on for way too long. So some points I'm just going to list and go straight on to the next one, and others I will expand on it a bit. But otherwise, point one, let's get stuck in now. Let's not wait anymore. So point number one, motivation in itself isn't a compelling enough reason for change. Motivation is simply a feeling, and feelings come and go. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, potentially you included. You rely way too much on motivation to just do the damn thing. And obviously I'm going to give more fitness examples here specifically, because that's what I'm involved in, and that's what you probably know me for. But that's what you might be relying way too much on motivation just to do your fitness journey, if that's what you want to say, or be consistent. Here's the thing, motivation, I know you might have heard me say it before, it's like that flaky friend. It's great when they're around, but you cannot rely on them. And like I said, when I was listing off point number one, motivation is a feeling. Feelings come and go. The same way you're not always going to be happy, or the same way you're not always going to be sad, or the same way you're not always going to be in a bad mood, you're not always going to be motivated. But here's the thing, just because you're in a bad mood, it doesn't mean you shouldn't still say thank you to the cashier when she scans your food, or it doesn't mean you shouldn't say thank you to the person holding the door open for you. It's the same way, just because you're not feeling motivated, it doesn't mean you shouldn't go on your 15-minute walk, or it doesn't mean you shouldn't be having your protein sources for the day, or it doesn't mean you shouldn't have at least one workout that week. So that's, you can see where I'm coming from now. You just can't rely on motivation. And for as long as you keep relying on motivation, you're going to have an incredibly hard time making a change, because again, it's just never going to last, ever. So don't rely on it. Point number two, don't ever use being a perfectionist as a justification to do nothing at all. Just start. It doesn't need to be perfect. The universe doesn't conspire against you, but it doesn't go out of its way to line up the pins either. Conditions are never perfect. Sunday is a disease that will take your dreams to the grave with you. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory, so I don't need to expand on it too much. But there's been many conversations I've had where people, they'll be venting to me, again, about their fitness-related goals. And they'll say something along the lines of, oh, you know, my aim was to go to the gym 4 times a week, every week for the month. But in 1 week, I only went 3 times. So I got super demotivated and I didn't end up going again for the rest of the month because I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I have to go 4 times a week, or I just, you know, I lose the motivation to do anything at all because, again, I'm a perfectionist and I have to go 4 times a week, or I have to follow up on a goal that I set myself at the start. But do you see how silly that sounds? Now I'm saying it out loud. So just because you didn't go to the gym, the amount of times you told yourself you were going to go in 1 week, now you're not going to go at all. It's like having a car, 1 tire pops or gets slashed, and now you're going to go slash the other 3 tires. Like, I know it sounds obvious saying this out loud now, but you'd be surprised as to how many people have this mentality, and it's potentially you included as well. Anyway, so yeah, otherwise, before I go on to the next point, just don't use being a perfectionist as justification to do nothing at all. It's not a sustainable mentality to have, especially if you have things that you want to achieve. Point number 3, many people only half-heartedly approach their fitness goals because deep down they don't believe they can achieve it. This could be you. Although half-heartedness doesn't get results, but what a lack of results does do is provide a solid excuse for when you do decide to give up again. So you'll start telling yourself you're the exception, etc. It's a cycle that many people trap themselves in. And because at the end of the day, if you don't believe you can achieve something, whether it's growing a business or your fitness goal or learning a language, then you're not going to achieve it. And this might sound like tough love, but it's the truth. And I think a great example of this is a Tim Ferriss story that I recently read in James Smith's book. And I might butcher the story slightly, but I know about 90% of it from the top of my head. So you're going to have to forgive me if I get it slightly wrong, but the message of it will still be the same. Basically, Tim Ferriss, he was lecturing a university class. He told, I think he had 17 students. He told them that he will buy a student he'll buy a one-way, like, so basically a ticket to travel the world, the entire world. He'll buy them a ticket if they can do one thing for him. And that's if they could contact someone within society that was deemed impossible to contact. So it could be like the CEO of Google, Jennifer Lopez, Cristiano Ronaldo, you name it. If they could contact one of those people, however it might be, he would buy them a plane ticket to travel the entire world. And obviously, I think the wording was important there because I think he said it's someone who would be deemed impossible to contact within society. And I think I don't remember how long it was. It might have been the next month when the students came back. All of them told him that they didn't do it just because they had so many other things going on, and they had work to do, and and coursework to complete, and they had to attend their jobs and family, etc. So none of them done it. Anyway, next year comes around. He says the same thing. So he says a similar thing to the 17 students this time, and it was just someone who, I think he said, instead of saying impossible to reach, he said it would be very hard to contact. Same type of people in society. So like the CEO of Google, Jennifer Lopez, Cristiano Ronaldo, whoever it may be. If you can contact them, he'll buy that person a plane ticket to travel the world. And within 48 hours, it was like 8 out of 17 people done it, or 7 out of 17 people done it within 48 hours, because it was different phrasing. Instead of saying impossible to reach, he just said someone who would be quite, you would perceive as quite hard to reach. So just because a lot of people in the first group deemed it impossible, they didn't even try. Whereas because of the second group, he changed the wording. He slightly changed the wording. 7 of them ended up completing it in the first 48 hours. And that's nuts. That's crazy. And it just shows that how much your self-belief will make a difference to whether or not you're going to give something a bloody good go. So that's something I do see very often. Many people only half-heartedly approach their fitness goals because, again, like I said, they don't genuinely believe they can achieve it. And you have to have genuine belief that you will achieve something if you're going to go out and do it. And that can And again, it doesn't have to just apply to fitness. It could be for business, etc., learning a language, what you do have to have that self-belief. Point number 4, some days you're just knackered and there's no explanation. Let me start that again. Point number 4, some days you're just knackered and there's no explainable reason. Accept it and go with it. Point number 5, some days you're bouncing off the walls and there's no explainable reason. Accept it and go with it. Number 6, if you swear you're doing everything right, but nothing is working, it's because you're not doing everything right. Simple as. Point number 7, something my grandma always says in Portuguese to me, if it can be done. So it's translated, it would mean if it can be done in 3 minutes or less, do it now, or don't leave for tomorrow what can be done today. And that's just something that's always stuck with me because it's true. Sometimes it's just so easy to procrastinate little things. It's like, if you can just do it in like 3 minutes or less, then do it now. Don't wait. Point number 8, fat shaming rarely works, so you're better off not doing it. And by saying rarely works, a lot of people say it never works. I've heard in a study that it works with like 2% of people, which is still incredibly low for the amount of people that do go around fat shaming. So you know what? Just don't do it. You're better off just not doing it. And if anything, it makes, a lot of studies show that it actually makes the person want to change less. And that type of logic might not, that might not make sense in your head initially hearing it. But, if you're always putting someone down for something, of course, they're not going to want to do it less. Human beings react best to like compliments, support, praise, etc. And it's just, that's just something that's been proven now. So don't go around fat shaming. I know you think you're helping. You might think you're helping, or I don't know if you just think or you might just be being a dickhead. But if you're just being a dickhead, then yeah, you just need to be quiet. If you think you're helping, you're not. You're just adding to the issue. Believe me when I say that. Okay. Point number 9. Sometimes you can pander too much. Not telling someone the truth in order to protect their feelings only helps in the short term, although it could be detrimental to them in the long term. And I know that might sound weird after point number 8 about fat shaming rarely works, so don't do it. But you don't, so sometimes you can pander too much. It doesn't mean that you should fat shame. There's other ways to go about it, okay? It's just there's so much context that it's very hard to give specific examples, but let's say someone's severely neglected their health, and I wouldn't, for example, I wouldn't say, oh, you're doing fine, you're doing great, just do you, like that's something that I think that's where there's an issue, because yeah, you are just overly pandering there, and you can get that message across without being a dickhead, like I've said, but it's just it's very context dependent, and it's up to you how you're going to deliver that. Otherwise, point number 10, you're way more likely to see the value and stick to something you're paying for. The moment it becomes free or massively discounted, the perceived value lowers greatly and your will to continue declines. If you want to commit to something, put money towards it and not just a bit of change. Of course, this isn't foolproof, but it can work well. And I've seen this many times. I've seen this over the years. When I was first starting Kairos Online, for example, I would take on some people for free because, again, I was just starting out. I was training people. Actually, I used to train people for free. This was actually before I started Kairos Online. So just when I started personal training, when I was like a teenager, I used to, I'll work with you for free. I used to say that to friends and family, and it would just never really go anywhere because the thing is with doing it for free, you can just stop anytime you want and you've lost nothing. There's no investment on your part on it. Whereas if you're paying a big sum of money every single month, you can bet that, you might be having these thoughts of, okay, I'm just not going to do anything. But when you see that sum of money come out your account, you're going to think to yourself, okay, I need to get my ass into gear. And there's just that, what's the word? There's just that, I can't remember the word, it slipped my mind, but you have skin in the game, basically, put it like that. So it's not like you don't have nothing to lose. Like, you better do it because you're paying for it now. And again, it's not foolproof. I have seen people pay money every single month, whether it's to a gym. To be fair, a lot of gym memberships can be quite cheap, depending on which one you're with, and still not go. But yeah, I do think it can help, maybe the more you're paying. Point number 11, you can't help everyone, and that just goes for everyone. That goes for everyone, regardless of which industry you're in. There's, I don't know, 8 billion people on this earth. it would be silly to think you could help every single person. You are going to just, I don't know if compatible is the right word, but you are going to just get on and click with some people more than others. And that's just the reality of it. Nothing wrong with that. Point number 12, complaining and blaming others for not reaching your health, fitness, or fitness-related goals changes nothing. Work with what you have. The choice is yours. And this is very real. It's something I see a lot. I've seen people, for example, blame their spouses a lot, their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their cousin, their mum, their sister, their friend, whoever it might be. For example, you know what? I've got a real world example that comes to mind straight away. A very close friend of mine. This wasn't recently. It was a few years ago. He said to me that he wasn't going to the gym because he had no time for it because he has a girlfriend and he has his friends. And I thought that was ridiculous. And basically that, obviously, that's a bit of a, I think you wouldn't mind me saying now, it's a ridiculous excuse because, you know, that's like basically half the world. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's like I said, it changes nothing. Choice is yours. You're either going to do it or you're not. And in some scenarios, it's going to be harder because maybe some people have kids, etc. And you know, there's different circumstances. But it's like I said, you have to work with what you have because that's the position that you're in. And that's not to say you have to, you know, go do like 100. Like I don't know how to explain it right now. Like the word's not coming to my head, but that's not to say you have to do 101 different things if you're doing 0 right now. But if you're implementing a few new better habits, whether it's drinking more water than before, walking more than before, then you're already on the right track. So basically what I just want to say is don't go around saying that you can't do something because of it, because of your husband or your wife, and they're making it harder for you. At the end of the day, you know what? You should set the example because you're not doing it for them anyway. You're doing it for you. So set the example. Point number 13, don't get too high when things are going well. Don't get too low when they're not. Embrace every season. They're all important. And I see this a lot on fitness journeys when people are making tons of progress. They get so ahead of themselves. They're like, yes, this is the best thing ever. Like if you're trying to lose weight and the scale goes down one day, you start celebrating and you're really happy. But I feel like having highs that big just means that when the lows do come, because lows will come, it's a part of life, whether it's on your fitness journey or not. Some weeks, say like, again, if your goal is weight loss and you don't lose weight for like 3 or 4 weeks, if you let the highs get to you that much, then that low is going to hit you damn hard. So my best, what I can say is just, and what I've learned from coaching a lot of people is, try not to get too emotionally attached into each one. Yes, acknowledge your accomplishments. Definitely, you know, pat yourself on the back but yeah, just try not to get too emotionally invested in either way, and take all of it as a lesson. Okay, keep taking it as it comes. At the end of the day, if you keep showing up and doing what you need to do and following up on habits, things are going to happen. Point number 14, if you've always lived in the same city or area, leave it for an extended period of time, even if it's just for a few months. It doesn't have to be now, but it's something I'd recommend planning for, because never ever leaving home or pushing yourself to be somewhere totally different is going to inhibit personal growth. And I strongly stand by that. As I said at the start of this podcast, you know, I've lived in 3 different continents now, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging. I'm just telling you what I've experienced, okay? And trust, like, the experiences I acquired in those 3 different continents it's just huge, and it's definitely changed me forever. And I understand a lot of things very differently, and I think a lot better now that I've lived in 3 different continents, that I've gotten to know different types of people and met different people from different walks of life. And yeah, if you're just always within that same area for your entire life, you are just going to inhibit personal growth, whether you realize it or not. And I know not everyone has the circumstances to just suddenly leave. I'm not saying, it's like I said, you don't have to just suddenly leave. And it might be hard, especially if you have kids, etc. But if it's something that you are in a position to do, then bloody work towards doing it. Okay? Anyway, point number 15, if you have gym intimidation, you are part of the majority, not the minority. Okay? And I feel like a lot of people who have gym intimidation think they are the minority and that everyone has gym intimidation apart from them, but that couldn't be further from the truth. As I said, you are part of the majority. Point number 16, the power to be able to grow a sustainable business all the way from the other side of the world while staying at home just from using the internet is absolutely mind-blowing. And I don't feel like I need to expand on that too much, but just the fact that you're here watching this right now just proves that point. 17, seeking mentors in whatever it is you want to improve is the best way to fast track progress. Right now, my business mentors at this moment in time, Jordan Sayat, Mike Vacanti, as well as my Japanese teacher, Sensei Yoko, have helped change my life. Is if there's a goal, so they've helped me change my life so much. And what I'm saying by this is basically, if there's a goal you deeply want to achieve, but you're struggling with it, meanwhile, you've never had any sort of accountability or guidance for it either, then you are missing out on one of the most important factors for improvement. And I don't feel like I can emphasize that enough. If you are struggling with a goal, why are you struggling alone? Why do you not reach out to someone who has dedicated many years of their life into getting good at what it is you want to achieve? And again, I'm going to use fitness related examples here because obviously that's what I work within. Whether it's gaining muscle, if you're struggling, why are you struggling alone? There is an ample amount of coaches out there that you could reach out to that you trust that will help you. Same goes for weight loss. If you've never had anyone guide you for weight loss, but you've been struggling for like many years now, why are you struggling alone? Reach out to someone. That's what you likely need to be given that push. You need the accountability. It's like I said, if you think you're doing everything right, but nothing's working, it's because you are not doing anything right, and you need to reach out to someone who has dedicated years of their life to help you. Point number 18, if you're going to give, and actually going back to that point, I was in that position once. For the first about year and a half, 2 years, I was training very consistently, and I would make minimal progress. And there just came a day I knew that I had to reach out to someone. So I got an online coach. I was with them for about 2 years because I was like, I should have made so much more progress than I have right now because I am so consistent. So I know I'm doing something wrong. And surprise, surprise, I made more progress in 6 months than I had made in 2 years. Anyway, point number 18, if you're going to give feedback on how someone can improve, you're better off doing it in the form of a shit sandwich. So compliment, feedback, compliment. Now, I heard Simon Sinek on a podcast recently saying that approach is just not a good approach, that it's rubbish, because when you want to give someone constructive feedback but complimenting them on something first doesn't make sense, because usually the compliment is so broad and then the feedback's very precise and the compliment's very broad again. And I could see where he was coming from with that, but that's just the port of, I couldn't believe he was saying that, because number one, let me just get it clear, I love his work. I think his work is amazing. Really, I'm a big fan of it, which is why I've listened to his podcast. But that's not how you would use it. And if you're using it like that, then you're using it incorrectly. I'm going to give you an example. And this is trust me when I say this, a shit sandwich can work very well if you know how to apply it. For example, when I've been coaching members and they send me their form video, when they're doing something with their form, let's say it's a hip thrust, you can always, and let's say they are doing something that's very obviously wrong, but they're also doing something that's very obviously right within, let's say, a common mistake people do on the hip thrust is, for example, they will look everywhere. They look up, they don't really put any thought towards where their eye placement is, but the actual hip thrust in itself could be quite good, and the foot position. So what I would say if I wanted to give them feedback in that position where the only thing that they needed to work on was their eyes, like the position of their head, basically, I would say the hip thrust, if they sent that over to me, I'd say your hip thrust looks really good. Your foot, I would say, I had a blank moment there. I would say your hip thrust, very good, clean form. Make sure you're focusing your eyes on the wall ahead of you, okay? So that you're not looking everywhere and you're not looking at the ceiling. But otherwise, I feel like with that, if you implement that, as well as the hip thrust form that you have right now, as well as your foot position, because your foot position is in a very good place, your form is going to go from good to great. And that is a good example of the shit sandwich applied, where it's not extremely broad, then very specific feedback, then extremely broad again, because all 3 points were to do specifically with the hip thrust video that person just sent me. And whether we realize it or not, like you could be hearing this and thinking, you know what, just give me the feedback, stop wasting my time with all of that stuff. It's easy to think like that, but then when you're on the receiving end of it, trust me, human psychology doesn't work like that. It's very easy to digest feedback when you're, again, given compliments as well at the same time. It's like what I said about the fat shaming. Because if that person, let's say that person did send me that hip thrust video and I said, oh, your eye position isn't in the good place. You need to fix your eye position, put your eye position in the bit. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just like very forward. It's not the same. It doesn't hit the same. Whereas if you say, you know, compliment, constructive feedback, compliment, it just digests a lot better, and that person is going to be more motivated on the back of it as well. Something I've learned over the years. I hope that makes sense. Point number 19, we all have our limitations, but when we listen to our critics, we also have theirs. I very much believe in this, because even when I started Keros Online, when I first started it, like in its first days, like I was just creating this online thing, I had my own friends and family used to tell me straight up, what the fuck are you doing? And I know that sounds harsh now. At the end of the day, I know they only wanted the best for me. And at the time, I'm not going to lie, that was a little bit hard to hear, but I had a vision and I wanted to execute that. And like I said, now you're here. You're what, 25 minutes deep into a podcast. And I've trained people from all over the world. Again, the US, okay, not all over the world, but in a lot more countries than I initially thought I ever would. You know, like I said, there was about 5, 6, 7 different countries, 8 different countries that I listed there, just because I had this thought one day in my bedroom. And I thought, and that's quite powerful. And the fact that, you know, it's easy to have these thoughts and ideas, but the fact that I followed up on it and made sure I went and executed it, and I was consistent with that for over the course of a good couple of years now, it's helped so much. And I didn't ever let those limitations of other people be placed upon me, because I had a vision, and damn right I was going to bloody achieve that. Point number 21, survivorship bias is a very real thing. So survivorship bias, if you don't know what it is, Google it. And I think it's just something that you should be mindful of, because sometimes I feel like when someone's achieved something, it's just very easy to take everything they've said as gospel. Whereas sometimes it's just, you know, a lot of factors can play a role, like their contacts, who they know, their luck, right place, right time. So I would just take their feedback with a pinch of salt, okay? Sometimes, okay? And I feel like you'll know when it's applicable. Number 22, echo chambers will do damage. I do believe that echo chambers will do damage. I try and be very careful that I don't put myself in an echo chamber. It's a lot easier to do that on social media rather than in face-to-face. So on social media, I'm going to speak about social media exactly here. Okay, let's see. Okay, put it like this. I have a lot of people who follow me that are strangers to me, because again, I work in fitness, etc., health and fitness, so it's very easy just for random people in the world to follow me, rather than if you're just having a personal social media account where you only have people you know, which, you know, most people have that, potentially you included. But because I have a lot of strangers who follow me, sometimes I'll follow them back, you know, depending if I feel like that person's, depending, you know, on how close I might get to that person, how often I speak to them, etc., or if I feel like they just look like a super interesting person, and I would love to get to know them more. Yeah, like I said, sometimes I'll follow them back. And with that, as time goes on, I notice that sometimes I'll make posts or stories that I really disagree with, or that I don't agree with. That is just, yeah, that's not, let me not overcomplicate that point too much. Sometimes they'll post things that I don't agree with. And at first, I used to have this initial reaction of, I'm going to unfollow you. And then I asked myself, why am I going to do that? Because I don't agree with that person. But let me try and think about it from their point of view. And this could go for anything. It could go for health and fitness related things. It could go for politics. It could go for, there's a countless list of stuff. But I think if we just unfollow people because we disagree with something they say, regardless of how strong we might feel about it, I think that's a slippery slope to go down, because then it becomes harder to understand their point of view. And sometimes I've actually stayed for following particular people because I disagree with them, and I would love to see how they think. And sometimes I feel like, and with time, there have been occasions where I'm like, it suddenly made sense to me, and now they've won me over, and I'm like, damn, like, you are very right. So that's why I feel like, and that would have never happened if I had unfollowed them and turned my social media into an echo chamber, which I feel like a lot of people do nowadays. A lot of people do that nowadays. And I think it's a slippery slope to go down. On the other hand, you know, sometimes there are people who I'm like, they'll put something up, I'm like, okay, that's just rubbish. Or I disagree with that initially. That's my initial reaction, but I'll stay following them just to see if I learn. But with time, you know, maybe the logic that they keep applying, etc. I just really don't believe it makes sense. And with time, I just feel like, you know what, that person just is talking out their ass. Then I will unfollow them. But it's something I try not to do too quickly. And I always do try and get their point of view. But again, if I just feel like, yeah, that person's just always talking shit, then yeah, there does come a day where I'm like, okay, it's probably not the best to have that in my circle, because you know, at the same time, even though I don't want to be in an echo chamber, I don't want to be around silly people all the time as well. I've got to protect my energy too. Okay. Anyway, basically what I'm saying is don't be a little snowflake if someone disagrees with you on a particular subject. Okay. Depending on what that subject is, of course. Of course, there are times where you shouldn't disagree on particular subjects. There are subjects that everyone, you know, should have the same point of view on. I can't think of any specific examples right now. I'm sure you can. 23, the placebo effect is extremely powerful. Yeah, I'm trying to think of specific examples. Nothing is coming to mind at the moment. So the placebo effect. And I can't really think of it. Actually, I thought of an example. It's not positive or negative. It's just an example of it happening, but it's very powerful. I think we are not going to understand the placebo effect in its entirety for many years now. But for example, James Smith, I was at his talk recently and he told me that he brought a bottle of wine, gave it to his friends. It was just a random bottle of wine from the supermarket, nothing special, gave it to his bottle of friends, and he said that it was voted the best bottle of wine in 2017. And he said that the amount of compliments he got on that bottle of wine that day was the most amount of compliments he'd ever had on a bottle of wine ever. And it's just because he said it was voted the best bottle of wine in 2017, which wasn't true. He just wanted to see their reaction. And I feel like even if me and you were on the receiving end of that bottle of wine and we were drinking it, we probably would have done the same thing, because again, we would have been under the placebo effect. It's just very interesting hearing those things. Number 24, intuitive eating is a great place to eventually reach, but it's not a tool for fat loss, especially off the bat. And I feel like, yeah, it's like I said, intuitive eating, surely it's the place everyone wants to reach. I feel like it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to be, you know, have guidelines with your food forever. But I feel like also there's a big mistake around it, that a lot of people think that with intuitive eating, it's a good weight loss approach. Like someone might tell them about it, they want to lose weight, so they're like, okay, I'm going to try intuitive eating. But the issue with that, if you've struggled with your weight your entire life, then how can you just suddenly go from struggling with your weight for many years to suddenly relying on intuition? That doesn't make sense. That relying on intuition is something that you have to slowly build up over time. And again, I'm speaking specifically for weight loss here. There are times where you can go into intuitive eating off the bat and you'll be good, and it could work very well for you. But I'm speaking in the scenario of weight loss and someone who's struggled with their weight for many years. Because you have to also realize we live in a world that encourages us to overeat, encourages us to be stationary a lot, not move around. And it's just incredibly difficult to just rely on intuition first. And I do think that's something that you have to earn with time, whether it's from maybe going through a phase of tracking your calories, having food guidelines in place, etc. So it's just something that you, to repeat myself, want to earn with time. 25, it's going to take longer than you think to achieve your goals, but that's okay. As you pursue this, the lessons that come with it flow into other areas of your life. Point number 26, a common issue many people have isn't weight loss. The majority of people can lose weight with any type of method, no matter how bad. For example, juice cleanses or detoxes. The issue that most people actually have is maintenance and keeping off the weight they've lost. And that's very true. Point number 27, starting with tiny habits is the best way to guarantee long-term progress. And to take it back to fitness examples specifically again here, a lot of people, when they're trying to change their health and fitness, they'll go from, you know, never exercising then to suddenly wanting to exercise every day in the gym, go to the gym every day or 6 days a week, which again, that's a huge habit to suddenly want to aim to do. Or they want to go from, you know, eating takeaway every night to never eating takeaway again. Again, that's a huge jump. You're likely setting yourself up for failure with that. Or you might only do 2,000 steps a day and then suddenly you want to walk 10,000 steps a day. It's like, you have to be more logical about this. You have to, be more logical. You have to think about this more smartly. Is going from never exercising to exercising 7 days a week a good idea? Or are you better off going from never exercising to maybe exercising 2 or 3 weeks at the start. It might not be the most craziest thing in the world, but starting with the most craziest of changes or habit shifting, that's incredibly hard. And you are a lot more likely to fail. There's many studies that show this. I've read a book recently that I would recommend, by the way. It's called Tiny Habits by an author called BJ Fogg. And Fogg is spelled Fogg, so Fogg. BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits, Google it. If you want to buy it. It's a book I would recommend. And it just basically talks about habits, not just in the scenario of fitness, but just general day-to-day life, that you can implement, tiny habits, tiny steps that you can take to set yourself up for success. And he just gives great examples in that book. So I would, again, just start off tiny. If for example, another example that I can think of that comes to my head is, let's say someone wants to lose weight. This could be you. You want to lose 15 kg. And I'll have someone that comes to me and they say, I want to lose 15 kg. And I'm just like, all right, instead of focusing on wanting to lose 15 kg, focus on losing 1 kg. Okay, focus on losing 1 kg, and then you focus on losing another 1 kg, and then another 1 kg, and another 1 kg. And like that, it doesn't feel so overwhelming, because a lot of people, they'll give up. Maybe when, they say they want to lose 15 kg, again, this could be you in 4 months or 5 months or 6 months, but then 4 months down the line, they've only, I say that, in air quotes, lost 3 kg or 4 kg. They're not going to appreciate the progress they've made because they were so set on losing 15. And now they're not what's the word? They're not appreciating how far they've already come. And that just causes demotivation, makes them not want to try, etc., etc. So yeah, just start off smaller. Start off with small steps, and you are a lot more likely to set yourself up for success over the long term. That's what I do with a lot of my Keros Online members as well. It's never a good idea to go for anything too drastic, because at the end of the day, the chances of you sticking to that is a lot lower, and you're going to end up beating yourself up and thinking that, you can never stick to anything, or you just quote unquote don't have enough willpower, when that's just not true. It's just because you just tried to aim for something off the bat that was very hard to reach. It's not a lack of willpower. It's just you want to start with tinier habits, and there's nothing wrong with that. So instead of going for 10K steps a day from 2K, if you're at 2K an average right now and you want to walk 10K, then just start off maybe aiming for 5K a day, and then see how that goes, and then adjust if from there if necessary. Anyway, do potentially look into getting that book, Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. Again, it is one I would recommend. And otherwise, that's all 27 points done. I hope you enjoyed listening or watching. I do want to get this point across that maybe some points, I don't know if you would agree with everything. I guess that's not important, because I'm just telling you about my own life experiences. And you can hear this the way you want to hear this, or listen to this the way you want to listen to this. At the end of the day, there was a very good intention behind all these points. Maybe not all are applicable to you right now. That's okay. Discard the ones that you don't feel like are applicable to you, and take on board the ones that you feel like are applicable to you. Because I'm sure there was at least one here. But otherwise, again, like I said, I know I'm not the most experienced person ever, but I've worked with many people from many points in life. And I do feel like I at least do have some things to share with you. Otherwise, again, it's the 17th of September, so it's not my birthday just yet, but chances are. But I'm publishing this on my birthday, and on my birthday, I'm going to make sure I do enjoy myself at least a little bit. I'm going to go out for a meal with my grandparents, which I'm looking forward to. And then on the weekend, I will go out with my friends to celebrate and have a meal with them. And I'm looking forward to that. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening. The fact that you made it all the way through this, I deeply appreciate that, honestly. If one of these points, if one of these points resonated with you, send me an email on the back of this. I'll leave my email in the show notes if you're listening to this on podcast, or if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, I'll put my email in the caption. And get back to me on the back of this with which point was your favorite point, and we can talk about this. I always do my best to get back to everyone, and so I'll definitely get back to you. Otherwise, again, thank you so much for listening. Have a lovely rest of the day. Take care, and I'll see you around.